Hello and welcome. You are listening to On Show, the Louvre Abu Dhabi podcast that takes you on a tour. Lighter than clay or bamboo, and less expensive than silk or parchment, despite its humble aspect, paper is one of humanity's most profound inventions. In today's episode, we're inviting you to dive into the rich artistic legacy of this material in our new exhibition, Stories of Paper. Organized in collaboration with the Musée du Louvre, the exhibition explores the multifaceted story of this medium. I am Botton, and for this tour, I have the pleasure to be with the exhibition's curators, Xavier Salmon and Victor Hundsbuckler. Xavier Salmon, Victor Hundsbuckler, thank you very much for taking us on this tour of the exhibition Stories of Paper today. So both of you are experts of artworks made with or on paper, and so you're inviting us on this journey in this exhibition. My first question for you is, what is paper actually?
So paper is both a material made with plant origin and a way of turning this plant origin in something else by destroying the original material in order to recreate something. And the way it is done could evolve, change, depending where you are.
And when is actually the history of paper starting?
We know that the paper was found in archaeological excavations in China, and the oldest piece of paper we have is dated around the 2nd century before Common Era.
And so we are standing in the introduction room of the exhibition, and already we have paper all around us through the shades of the space, this gray, white, off-white, and also through the material itself. On our left, we have this ribbon of strips of paper that are hanged and printed with the introduction text and this famous date, the 2nd century BCE. And on our right, we have strips of paper that are used as a screen for a projection showing the techniques of paper making.
We were thinking it was important to show how it's done in two important areas of production, Asia and Europe. The way to do the paper is the same everywhere. You can use directly the vegetal, or you can use all textiles. And in China, in the 2nd century BCE, it was done with all textiles.
And so just before we discover the first artworks, can you tell us a word on the way you structured the exhibition?
The exhibition appears as a definition of what paper could be for us in 12 different rooms, 12 different criteria, which are both material criteria, but also more intellectual criteria with this chronology, which is going throughout the exhibition from the beginning to the end in order to accompany this more maybe personal way of defining what paper is.
So let's now enter in the first section and discover the origins, the plant's origins. When we enter this square room with these off-white walls, the attention is immediately grabbed in this section by the artworks that on our right in a niche. It's a monumental piece that looks like a page of a herbarium where a plant is trapped in layers. And when we look really closely, we see all of the details of the fibers of the plant. The artwork is called Papal Tree, and it's by the Indian artist. And it's from 2017. Can you tell us a word about the choice of this artwork in this section, the plant's origins?
Of course, it's very impressive, and the fact it's impressive was important for us in order to begin this walk. But although symbolically, it's done with a plant who is the tree under which Buddha sat during his enlightenment time. So it has also this symbolical importance for a room in which you could find works on paper, done on paper coming from Asia, Japan, China, but also some pre-Columbian paper.
So in South America.
We can use a lot of plants to do paper, but some are most interesting to do the paper. Paper mulberry tree is a very precious vegetable because the fiber are very long. And this is the reason Chinese, Korean, and Japanese are using that kind of vegetable because it gives strength to the paper because of the fibers.
You know, one thing that made paper a global material was this possibility to use plants coming from all over the world.
Let's now discover the next section. The title is A Humble Material. And so here we enter a much more open space with light gray walls. And right in front of us, the first artwork we see is this monumental piece, a very striking piece by the iconic Emirati artist Hassan Sharif. So can you tell us a bit about this artwork and why choosing this piece for this section about the humble material?
You know, it's almost a sculpture done with paper. And because of its size, because of the atmosphere given.
It's very surprising because it's huge, almost 4 meters high, and yet it looks very light. It doesn't even touch the floor. It looks like a cloud, an octopus of thin ropes and pages of a dictionary.
Hassan Sharif was an Emirati-born artist, but he trained in London. And this work relates that because it is reusing pages coming from an English-Arabian dictionary. And the story, the global story of paper that we wanted to share is dealing of a material which was used all over the world because it was very affordable, because it could have been produced in mass. Because of that, it was reused and reused. And this sculpture of paper by Hassan Sharif says that.
So let's turn now to our right and discover this very intriguing display. Xavier, what are we looking at?
We are looking at dresses done in Korea with paper. So it's a dress used in the country with the hat, with the vest, with the shoes.
Even the shoes are made of paper.
Even the shoes are made of paper. So it's small pieces of paper twisted. It's like to do a pullover, but the material is paper. And it was really common all around Korea to have that kind of dresses done with paper. So it's a tradition in Korea because the hanji paper is one of the most famous traditional paper done in the world. And sometimes when you are working in the country, in Korea, you can see some peasants working in the field with that kind of dresses because it's a very humble and very not expensive material. And the ladies are still doing that kind of dresses. And it's not a problem if it's destroyed because it's a humble material, so you can do it a new one. And it's one of the treasures of Korea.
Let's now turn around and we'll continue our journey to the next section called A Movement by passing this showcase with 3 vertical drawings. Sure. And then we pass along this accordion folded landscape by the artist Etel Adnan to discover a very impressive display, a very unique display of this 14 meters long landscape. Victor, can you tell us a bit about this specific artwork?
It's by an Italian-born artist, but active in France, known under the name of Carmontel. At the time it was created, this transparency was proposed to who was watching it inside a box of wood with light coming from behind and a window like a sort of television, if you want.
It's really a beautiful landscape with very vivid colors And it's really interesting to see all of these characters along the way, all of these little scenes along the way. It's really, can we say it's like one of the first movies or animated images?
It's an aristocratic play because Carmontel was working for a princely family and he was in charge of the entertainment of the family. So he was playing, he was writing theater plays, but we know he, at the end of his life, was doing transparencies. This is one of the first done around 1790, because you have the revolutionary flag, white, blue and red.
The French Revolutionary flag.
On the transparency. You can see the people doing the promenade are still dressed as the end of the 18th century. So you have to imagine Carmontel showing part of the transparency in the wood box and telling a story. But today we don't know what is a story. We have some of the plays still preserved, but we don't know what was a story told by Carmontel when he was showing the transparency. We can imagine it could be a love story because it's...
from the very late 18th century.
It's a path in the nature, in the garden with some fabrics. So it's characteristic of the taste of the time.
Let's now turn around and discover this rectangular room that's dedicated to the criteria of color.
Yeah, the paper as a support of color.
And what is quite striking and maybe a bit paradoxical is that the first artwork we see is actually white.
Yes, because it was, at first paper is white or something like white.
White, off-white, grayish.
Yes, and century ago, it was very difficult to produce paper in color. In the whole Europe, you had this practice of putting colors on the surface of paper in order to allow artists, but artists were doing that, to have the possibility of representing things differently.
And if we turn slightly to our right, so we discovered this piece that you mentioned, the purple Quran. Xavier, on this piece, what is the purpose of color or its meaning maybe?
There is a tradition in the Islamic world to glorify the Quranic text. And since the 10th century, we have some very precious Quran books done on colored paper. One of the first was done in North Africa, maybe Tunisia, maybe Morocco, in the 10th century, and it's very well known. It's the blue Quran. And we decided to show one of the very famous Quran from the National Library in Paris, and this is a purple Quran. So it's part of the Quran. It's a juz, because the Quran is divided in 30 different parts. So you have to imagine 30 books like that. So the writing, the surat, is written with silver.
So it's very precious.
Very precious, on a purple page, and the purple was done with murex. So it's a shell, a kind of shell, and the shell is producing a very strong red. And you have a wonderful example with the purple Quran. So it was written, we think, in Tunisia in 1405.
Let's continue together to the next section. So we exit the room and take towards our left. And here we discover this very also unique feature of the exhibition. Xavier, you actually have made a full room, an actual room of a Korean house inside the exhibition. So let's get closer and tell us a bit about this wonderful installation.
So we are in the section of the exhibition devoted to one of the best property of the paper. It's transparency. And in Asiatic architecture, in China, Japan, and Korea, the paper is used inside the house for the walls, for the windows, for the floor. So when I was first time in one of the most famous Korean cities producing paper, Jeonju, I've seen some of these traditional houses. The name is Anok. And I was invited to sleep in one of these houses. And I discovered that I was living in the middle of the paper because the walls were covered with paper, the famous Angie paper. The windows were covered with paper and playing with the translucidity of the paper. And the floor are with a special, very thick paper.
And so this kind of room, you said, is used as a sleeping room. Does it have other usage in the daily life?
No, you can sleep, you can take the tea, you can have a nap. But for example, the kitchen is outside the house for preservation reason, and you have normally a garden, inner garden, and it's open to the garden. And we are very, very happy to show that house, which was constructed by 3 Korean artists in a very short time.
And especially for the exhibition.
Especially for the exhibition.
Let's now exit of the room itself, and we will cross through the ribbon of paper that reappeared in this section. And here we discover a section called a versatile medium.
Yes, because it's more affordable, because it's very easy to change. Paper was used in order to give some replicas of silk, so you have, for example, and just Indian books of miniatures, mountings around the miniatures, which are giving the effects of silk, gold, for example. But you have also these 2 albums which are made with some different marble papers, which is a very specific way of ornate paper.
And we see also next to the chest this little pen case.
Yes.
That is actually made of paper. The whole box is made of paper with the technique of papier-mâché. So paper can also be shaped in certain ways and made very stiff, right?
Yes, giving the effect of a Chinese or Japanese production of lacquer object.
Yeah,
lacquer objects, yes.
Let's now turn and we'll enter the next room. We're invited to enter again by the ribbon of paper with different type of scripts. We see Asian characters, we see Latin characters and Arabic alphabets. And here in the middle of this small square room, there is this book right at the middle that's open on a text in Korean characters, and it looks very humble, but it's actually a major loan for this exhibition. Xavier, what is the story of this piece?
Everybody in Europe is thinking that the printing was created in Europe by Gutenberg with movable type, but in fact, the system was invented in Korea 1 century before. So you have in this room, in the center of the room, one of the most important book printed in the world. This one was printed in 1370, and it was printed with xylography. So you have to imagine a piece of wood carved with all the text. And it's done at the end of the Goryeo dynasty time, and it's one of the last examples of xylographic printed book, just before the creation of the movable type for printing. And the first book printed with movable types is the Jigji in 1377, and it's today preserved in the National Library in Paris because it was sold in the 19th century to the ambassador of France in Korea. So this is the reason this treasure is now in France. And this is one of the books the ambassador bought in the same time. And for Korean culture, it's a very important book because it's one of the last published with the xylography system.
And indeed, we are actually in the section dedicated to the reproduction, thanks to paper, reproduction of texts, but also images.
Yeah. When the printing was created, it was very important for the production of paper because it was necessary to do more and more paper for prints, for books, for everything. So the production changed totally and suddenly. And this is the reason we have done a selection of famous prints in Europe, but also in Japan, and you can admire famous wave by Katsushika Okuzai. It's one of the most famous prints in the world, depicting this incredible wave with small boats and fishermen lost in the middle of the wave. This print is part of the Abu Dhabi collection. And for us, it's very interesting to show these blue and gray and white print in comparison with, for example, the print after Van der Meulen, so French artist from the 17th century, on the other side of the room, to explain how the printing was important for the diffusion of the images.
Let's now discover the next section. So we exit this room and we enter a more open space, which is dedicated to resistance and fragility of paper.
Yeah, because paper has both characteristic fragility and
strength.
Yeah. And you can, of course, find their strengths in traditional Japanese, Korean, Chinese architecture.
When we enter the room, we're facing this artwork by Mohamed Kazem, the scratches on paper. On our right, we have the Japanese folded screen. And what I would like is just to turn around and have a look at a very smaller piece, which is this portrait of Moses holding the table of laws that has a very particular story.
Yes, because it's by a northern artist active in France during the 17th century, whose name was Philippe de Champaigne, one of the most exquisite painters of this period. But the drawing is partly destroyed by fire.
And we see that each corner is actually burnt, and really, by chance, the portrait itself is intact.
Yes, and so this drawing was before the fire in the collection of one of the greatest cabinet makers of the reign of Louis XIV.
In
France, Sir André Charles Boulle. And he was one of the major collectors of drawings ever. And so in the beginning of the 18th century, his workshop was destroyed. And with his workshop, the major part of his drawing collection.
And except for fire, are there other very strong enemies of paper in terms of preservation?
Yeah, the light.
Light.
The light is a factor of degradation. And near the Philippe de Champaigne drawing, you can see one more by Pierre-Paul Prudhon. So he was working at the end of the 18th century. And this is a famous portrait of the Empress Josephine, the first wife of Napoleon I. And this was drawn on blue paper. And you can see there was a protection all around the drawing. And
a frame?
A frame, yes, a paper frame. And the part protected by the paper frame is still blue. But the part shown to the daylight and to the moonlight is now yellow, because you have this kind of discoloration of the paper done by the light. And this is the reason we have to preserve all the paper support, work of arts, books, in a dark room. Like that, the light is not doing degradation of the paper.
And
this is the reason the drawings are on show only 3 months.
Yeah.
Every 5 years.
So it's really a chance for every visitor here to see all of these pieces, because they are really on show for a very short amount of time, and then it's only 5 years from now that we could see them again.
Yeah.
Let's now discover the next section. We pass along the ribbon of paper on our left, and we will enter the room that's on our right. It's a square room dedicated to the notion of space. And first, the space for paper is the space of the sheet of paper. And so what does it say?
The sheet normally is rectangular, because when you are doing a sheet of paper, you are using a frame to do the sheet, and the frame is rectangular. So this size of the sheet was very important for artists. And for example, in the corner of the room, you can see 2 drawings done by Italian masters at the end of the 15th century, famous Italian artists, Fra Angelico and Pisanello. And if you are looking to the drawing by Fra Angelico,
On our right.
on the right, you can see only lines because Fra Angelico is thinking about the way to do the perspective. So he's looking at
A room.
a space, and he's thinking how I can do the same thing on my sheet of paper. So this is the reason you have all these lines and niches, large one on the left side of the sheet and small one on the right side of the sheet to introduce the perspective inside the sheet of paper. So
And this idea of depth of the space,
Yeah.
but on a 2D material.
material on a 2D support. Yeah.
So in this room, you have two things already. You have the question of space given physically by the sheet of paper, and the fact that until the 19th century, it was not possible to produce paper, sheets of paper of large scale, and it's the way of artists are dealing with this difficulty, like in this drawing by Charles Lebrun.
So we see that at the center, the drawing is representing the seated boy, and the left leg goes all the way down to the edge of the paper,
Yeah.
but it's cut around the ankle. And
Right.
just next to it, we have again the same leg.
Same leg,
But
represented in rule, but not in its normal position.
so we can see the full leg and the feet and the shadow under
Yes.
it. And so when we entered in the next section that is dedicated to collection, we discover different types of objects and collections. Can you tell us a bit about it, Xavier? maybe?
The paper was used for prints, for drawings, for books, and since centuries it was collected. So we have done a selection of different drawings from European world, from Indian world, from Persian world, and showing how these drawings were collected with special mount all around them. The drawings are glued on paper and you have special decoration all around, and you can see it's a way to show how the owner of the drawing is thinking about his collection.
And in this other part of the room, we have a collection of various pieces. There are folded papers, all scribbled in writings, in Arabic writings, little sketch, and many tin box. And this is by another Emirati artist.
Abdullah al-Sadi.
And it's quite an intimate collection because it's the diaries of the artist, and on which we can discover elements about his process, his artistic process,
Yeah.
but also moment in his life and
Diaries, yes.
Who is meeting, how he's thinking about his art, what are his some wishes. For example, one of the Leporello on the left side, you can see drawings depicting birds and man with
wings.
because one of his dreams is to fly. So it's a way to write his life and to preserve his life.
And so the next section is dedicated to the possibility to annotate paper and to leave a trace.
Yeah, to leave a trace, because it's not just about annotating, but we have in this room fantastic drawings giving annotations about the material needed in order to create this fantastic costume, this fantastic dress of a wearer by an Italian artist whose name was Perino del Vaga. But you have also this drawing giving indications of colors and material also by this fantastic Swiss artist, Lyotard.
So that's the little drawing on the left side of the wall.
He was a Swiss artist, and he is describing on this drawing a traditional dress of a woman living in Greece. So
Living in the island of Milos, where we have found the famous Venus of Milos, one of the masterpieces in the Louvre Museum. So we can easily understand when you are traveling and you don't have so much time and you want to take images, to sketch something you are looking at, but you can't do everything, so you put notes all around the drawing about the colors of the dress, and this is one of the best examples with Lyotard.
And so in one look, we can see the image and the description all together. And in the center of the wall, there is also a couple of miniatures that are exceptional by the details. They're representing a young man and a young woman holding a rose.
Yes.
But also it can even beyond the beauty of the miniature and the level of detail that's incredible, those two miniatures hold a secret in a way.
Yes, because the paper composing those 2 pages with miniatures on the verso as constituted by different layers of papers and glued together. And inside you have an engraving by a French artist, Daniel Rabel, describing a flower. So it's not visible to the public, but we know that inside it we have.
In the layers of paper. Let's now discover our last section. So we exit this room. We continue to follow the lead of the ribbon of paper, where we see the date and time going closer and closer to our time, our day. And we enter this large section called a malleable material. So what does it mean?
So it's about the fact that paper gives the possibility to do cuttings, and also the fact that paper could be a possibility to transfer the drawings which is at first on it to the surface to be painted.
Facing us, there is actually a very large-scale cut-out paper representing a piece of a chariot, a seated man, and rearing horses that are quite impressive.
Yes, and those drawings have the final size of the painting represented at the vault of the Hall of Mirrors in Versailles.
And around us, we see also other ways of using cut-out paper. We saw a very large scale in front of us. There are also miniature cutouts, Xavier.
Yeah, and one of the best cut paper work is surely this small book by Muhammad Fairi. And you have small landscapes done with different pieces, small pieces of paper, colored paper, and you can see these landscapes. And next to these landscapes, there is another book with calligraphy, and all the calligraphy is done with cut papers. It's a very precious and fragile work because all these pieces are very, very small. And you have to imagine the time to do that.
Yeah, the mastery of the cut out.
And this book is from Turkey because it's a Turkish tradition to do cut paper works. And this one was done in the 17th century.
And cut-out paper is also used in modern art and contemporary art. On our, in front of us, next to the drawings for Versailles, for the Hall of Mirrors, we have a beautiful example by Pablo Picasso from the Louvre Abu Dhabi collection.
Yes, it's the case in all the different rooms. We wanted to propose to the public the fact that the combinations, the possibilities given by paper are still alive.
And so with this room, we reach to the end of our journey in this exhibition. Would you like to say a few words to conclude?
Please come.
Please come and visit. In your opinion, what is the future of paper beyond the 21st century?
Today, it's always one of the most used material in the world.
But less and less in order to be the support of writings and pictures. And so This is a question because our civilization is a civilization based on the written book, and yeah, this is a question.
You can visit the exhibition Stories of Paper at Louvre Abu Dhabi from the 20th of April until the 24th of July 2022. This podcast episode was produced by Louvre Abu Dhabi. Our warm thanks go to Xavier Salmon and Victor Hundsbuckler for their participation, and France Museum team for their support. Preparation and recording by Amine Kharchach and myself, Marine Botton. Post-production, music and mix by Making Waves. This podcast is also available in Arabic and French on the Louvre Abu Dhabi mobile app and website, louvreabudhabi.ai. Thank you for listening. Stay tuned for our next episodes.